Thank you. So what do we like most about Jay's, I was gonna say sermon, about,
That'll preach.
about Jay's story? What did you like most?
I think in that moment, man, you reminded me. I was like, oh wait, like, when did I know God was real?
Hmm.
And that made me think, like, I had to ask myself at most weeks, like, what is God? Is He still real to me? You know what I mean? So like that was, that took me. So I needed to know how the story was gonna end. If that makes sense. Like I anticipated how God was gonna use this boy as a conduit, but also to use me. So that was a reminder, man. That was good.
I appreciated your animation in the story. I felt that you brought the book to life. Like if we were reading the story, because I know your personality, so I could see you like, I ain't got time. Let's go put prayer. And like even with that, like your emotions mimicked how I'm like, that's Jay. Like that's what he would do. And when you brought the chair up, like he was like, so I pulled up a chair and then you did it. You sat down. Like I felt like I was sitting on that bed with that little boy. Like I was like, he's about to tell me something. Like it shifted the dynamics. I felt like you got on the kids level, and you brought us down to take on the persona of a little kid wanting to hear and learn something. So I appreciate the animation. They were purposeful. They weren't distracted to me.
I'm gonna piggyback on the transition because I like the way you were standing and you had us there, and then you transitioned when you were sitting down, and it just helped with the story and it became more personal and just grabbed me a little bit more because I'm like, oh, what is he gonna say next? So, and I like the plot of it, how everything just kind of flowed, and then especially I like how you ended it too. So it's perfect.
Your description of the space you were working in where these boys lived was really strong. I loved how no nonsense it was at the beginning, and you're kind of up against the deadline, and this kid comes at you with this question about, is God real?
5 minutes left.
Yeah. I loved that the way his kind of interruption in your routine and your very matter-of-fact setup that leads into these stories about these miracles mirrored each other. I thought that was fantastic. You did it. It was great.
Yeah.
Daniel?
This is kind of similar to what Scooby said, but you completely brought us in, like to your feelings, but then it made us think about our own feelings about that. And the way that you brought that up, about I needed to make a choice right there. And so like that moment, like you asking that kind of rhetorical question, that questioning inside of yourself, just like put me in your seat. And I'm like, I started thinking about like, oh yeah, like how's this gonna relate to, me having that question inside or being asked that question. And to me, that made it so real. It wasn't just your experience, you made it our experience. And so that was powerful to me.
Okay.
I actually took a class with Jay before we had to tell stories. So we've done this once with each other. And it's interesting because this was very different.
Okay.
In a really great way. Like your energy and the way you felt free to move as you were going back and forth to describe, going from room to room, and that whole process was like I was there with you. I saw what was happening. And you were so confident and smooth about it. So it was fun because it wasn't like last go around the stories with you. Like I could tell what you were thinking,
Right.
and you were just telling your story, and it was really authentic in that way.
Nice. Anything else? I like the story. So it wasn't. I thought it was gonna be like extremely like detailed.
You did, man. You did well.
No, but it was good. It was good. I liked a lot about it. He gave us a good description of working at a facility, and I was like, oh, I have to count my arms again. And but working at a facility with the young men and how the night ended. Like, I would go through each room, 2 people in a room. So that was a good description of what was usual. And then you brought us over to what was unusual. When your description of this squeaky, puberty-stricken voice.
That's really great.
Right?
Amazing.
And you said that and calling your name and asking me this question, how do you know God is real? But then clarifying what he meant by that. So I don't want scriptures. I want to know how you know. And I like the way you did that. There was, the point after this, you described him when you took the chair and you sat down and you just talked to us about that whole experience and what you shared with him. But what you were thinking in that moment, like, okay, going back and accessing those experiences of yours that led you to believe God was real and sharing those with him. So the way you set that up, I thought was really well done. From the way you told the stories, but then also your very presence and the way you interacted with us during that, those moments. I thought that was really good. So it was kind of authentically you, I think. And not that I know you well, but it just seems like that was an authentic move, just the whole way you kind of related to the kid, but then also to us. So I thought that was all well done. And so when you were kind of recounting some of the experiences of those 2 different stories, then you found those things that were common. They were inebriated at first, maybe stumbled in or whatever. They were prayed over, and then it just seems like their eyes became clear. So that kind of thing. You repeated that, for both of those stories, kind of a similar experience. And then you shared that, and the way you ended it, when you talked about Sean and the transformation that he underwent. And then, and the fact that, so I'm trying to think how you kind of said it to end it there, but it's like over a period of time, he was happier, stronger, and I think you ended it slightly different than you had it on the paper, but I thought the way you ended it with Sean was a really good way to do that. So I appreciated the setup from the beginning and your presence. Even when you were standing, you seemed pretty confident, like, I'm going to share this. And it's good. I don't know what goes on the inside, and it doesn't really matter. But for me, looking at you, you just seemed like confident that you had a story to tell us and you were going to tell us a story. And you did it well, and it flowed from beginning to end. So I thought all of that was well done. So thank you for that. How could it be even better, do we think?
So this is something I got from Angela when we had our worship class.
Yeah.
When you was moving your hands, first time I heard it click, I looked down at my own wrist, because Angela has now made me very conscious of my jewelry. And I'm thinking, oh, I don't want to be disruptive to him, so I put my hands down. Then I heard it again, and I was like, it's Jay. So even though your story was engaging, I found myself looking down at your watch, and then looking back, and then looking back down at your watch. So just even with that, because your story had a lot to it. It had a really several deep meanings. But for someone who, even like a little touch of ADHD, that would just, I would miss the blessing of what you had to say because I'd be focused on that.
Thank you.
Okay, what else?
I'm just directing.
We're here. We're here.
We need you IT person.
Here goes my extra credit.
The moment when you started thinking back to those stories of the people with the hands, over them and the prayers and their transformations and the work of God at that point, I got a little lost where we were anymore, because you name dropped the places, and then I didn't even know where we were originally. So it was geographical in a sense. It kind of distracted me there, like just for a beat. But I'm like, wait, we're Cincinnati, and then we're DC.
And then you figured out like what he was
Yeah,
doing.
yeah, exactly. It took me a moment, but then I kind of snaked back to, that was your thought process. But
Right.
those little extra details like just threw me off a little bit. Even if you set that up as like, I thought back to a couple of like really powerful incidents.
Okay.
And
Right.
then you told
And that
those
could be-
exact stories,
That would be- okay.
and then you're not trying to fit pieces together,
Okay.
as a hearer.
Right.
Yes.
And so, because
Yeah.
the stories are incredibly powerful, and so I felt I missed just a half beat there.
Yeah, so I agree. So even a couple lines, just to let people know where you were going. And
Okay.
because you were, trying to respond to Sean's question and thinking about how do I know that God is real? And so even saying, just like Daniel said, so that took me to 2 separate experiences that I had that really concretized who God was for me. And the first one was this, and then the next one was this. And so, in response to Sean's question, or if something like that, and
Okay.
so go to the stories, but then come back, bring us back to Sean, so we just know where you're going. Sometimes in a story, it took me a few seconds to like, okay, so we're not talking about Sean anymore. We're talking about, a couple other people. So just make it clear so we can follow you where you're going and come back. And yes, and a lot of people will go with you. Like we got it. It just took us a couple seconds. Yeah.
So I guess, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was an area of struggle as I was like recalling it and trying to write it down. Was I felt like this was a story about Sean, but then it turned into like a story within a story
Yeah.
within a story. And I'm
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
And which is okay. So the good thing about it is like, so some of us are kind of used to in this technological age. We may see television shows, movies, those kinds of things where they always flashing back and going forward. So it's not something unusual, right? So we can follow you. You just need to let us know. So unlike the advantage that a television show has, they can put on the screen a year before or a year after or something like that, and we can just read that. But you need to tell us if you're doing a verbal story where you are, where you want us to go. We'll go with you, right? So that's it. Other thoughts? Anything else that could have made it even stronger?
So am I correctly understanding, so you were with the boy, and that made you think of the time you were in the pulpit and were interrupted.
right.
And then during that time in the pulpit, you were thinking of a time
Right,
before
yeah,
that, correct?
right,
Okay,
right.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I thought that movement was really interesting. I'm with Daniel that I had to really okay, where are we?
Right.
But also just thinking about that and about just the fact that these are stories about interruptions on interruptions. You got a lot of parallelism in your stories, and that's a really effective tool for listeners if you can line up those pieces with your language, with repetition or with your timing, whatever. Take those pieces and take the communication and make it just super clear. I think that would be great, and that would get us all right in your head and in that space with you.
Okay. Yes, I definitely need to implement that, because I felt that I needed something to tie it together. I hadn't quite worked that piece out, but I think this is gonna allow me to go back and try to work it in there.
Cool.
Yes,
Right.
definitely.
Yeah, so having story upon story is not, like you said, it's not something that out of the question, but how do you do that? And so like there were, like Anna was saying, the parallels were there, and I think for a couple of the stories you used that parallel very well. And so just kind of pulling it all together would be good.
Okay.
So you think you have something?
Yeah, I thought it was really great how you dropped in that you knew his background with his parents having substance abuse issues. But I wanted like that somehow to be amplified, because that to me was like the connecting thing. I was like, oh, Jay knows what this kid needs to hear.
Okay.
He knows how that's affected him, and like that these stories will resonate for that reason. And you tied it back around a little bit in the end, saying, you know, he wasn't thinking about his parents so much, he was
Okay.
doing all this stuff. But I think that would have been one of the parallels that, if just like amped up a little, would have helped connect that.
Okay. I received that. I think that
He's
definitely,
such a pastor.
that's something that I can see how that would really, probably should have added, yeah.
It just seems so intuitive that you were like, oh yeah, this is the story. Of course this is how God shows up, now you get it. Yeah, it makes sense. All right. I think we're good.
Okay.